Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first budget meeting for our 2024 budget. I'd just like to open by saying thank you to all of our members of council for showing up bright and early on a Saturday morning to go through this. I'm really pleased that we're here in November starting this process. It's something we talked about last year in order to kind of help streamline operations for our staff. That we could get this done a little bit earlier and get underway. I'd also like to thank our senior staff team, Mr. Barbeau, Ms. Craddock, Mr. Poulin, and Chief, for all the work that they've put in to getting to this point so early. You know, whenever you change timelines and change the way you do things in an organization, it creates a little bit of chaos and a little bit of extra work for everybody. And so I'd like to just thank staff for working so hard to get the documents that we have in front of us ready so soon. So to open the meeting today, I will take any declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda. Councillor Gagne, Councillor St. Louis.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor St. Louis. Be it resolved that the agenda for the council budget meeting held on November the 18th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. And with that, we'll move on to item 3, 2024 budget presentation. And for that, I will hand the floor over to our CEO, Mr. Barbeau.
Mine on the screen now.
Good morning. That was more for my benefit to wake up. Seems like we've just finished the budget. This is weird for us. Thanks. So again, once again, thanks, and thanks to the mayor for kind words. You know, it's interesting. It's my 23rd budget, first time that we're actually taking, or starting to take the steps in November, which is a pretty cool evolution, because I think that the benefits that we'll talk about are going to be really presenting themselves. Without talking about the tender, there was a retender of a job that came in 3 times the price. I think it might even be going to council.
On Tuesday, yeah.
Where tendering early, people have the prices, there were 4 bidders instead of 1, and the prices were preferential. So sample size of 1, but if we can get moving, I think we'll be much more efficient during the actual fiscal year than the past. So to start off, I'd like to also acknowledge and say the same thing as the mayor. It is different in a few other ways too, because we're kind of conditioned as staff, and not just senior staff, but I have to thank the middle managers and all of the crews that get their budget submissions at a time when they're really busy trying to finish what they said they would do in 2023. So it's a little bit of an adjustment for us. I apologize if there'll be a few glitches going forward, but there are some things some steps we may have skipped a little bit to get to this point, but we did the best with the time we could. So we will start off by, I'd like to start off by the drill down and talk a little bit about where we are now, or what this document represents. And you've seen it, but I've got roll-ups of it. So next slide, Vanna. Was that the first slide, or was
That's apparently the first slide.
Did I jump a slide? Oh, it's 2-sided, so they're trying to say. So we're starting off with the 5.31% increase. If you like my edit, that's pretty good. We, in pulling everything together, we started off with the initial submissions from staff to be about 12%. And so then Elisa and I sat down, went over it, and I think the theme that we're trying to present to you is just kind of something that is strategic given the monies that we have, where we want to go with the term plan, where we want to go with restructuring and providing the proper resources to play. But this is the status quo. So you're looking at about $200,000 per percentage per point. And so the deficit right now between a 0% tax increase and the 5.3 is slightly over $1 million. Now, I will also say, and we'll repeat, because it's mid-year, we've made assumptions on a few things. We made assumptions on our board levies. We have asked the Oshawa what he feels it will be that he'll be presenting to his board. And so that's, we've taken that. And then we made assumptions based on historicals from the past years and what we've been hearing, which will be coming down the pike for DSAB and the health unit. So these are going to be discussions that lead to, hopefully a 95% decision point. But obviously, we'll have to come back to you once all of the assumptions are verified prior to approving anything. Next.
Dave, just quickly, the health unit's next Wednesday, so we'll have some preliminary numbers for you next week.
So we'll present to you what our assumption is on the health unit, and then you work really hard, Councillor Restool, to get it under that, and then you're helping your colleagues. Right. There you go. So our projected surplus this year, again, it's a projected surplus, obviously, because we have to forecast some encumbered expenditures and what we can see are, would be year end to finish the year type of expenditures. And so right now, loosely, this is our surplus is basically around 1.2. That'll be for next year. Now, with respect to the surplus, what was the total operating here? I'm always saying, is it 38 or something? Expenditures?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I throw round numbers out so to help you be strategic and because I don't have the decimal point beside me. But, if you look at 1.2 million on a $38 million budget, it sounds like, oh my God, it sounds like a lot, but it really, when it's an accumulation of all the things that are going on, it's really not that bad. We would like to see it more around the 700 range or 800 range, but in this case, I think it helps us out because, our transfer or reliance on reserve policy, we may have to quieten that down over this term to get to an accepted budget. So, we firm.
Oui, juste une question. Le surplus de 1,2 million, c'est-tu des projets qui n'ont pas été complétés puis l'argent est remis? C'est-tu même que ça marche?
Non, ça c'est net c'est argent pas complété. So he's saying we've rolled out we parked aside from that assumption the project's not done and rolled over.
Correct. So that 1.2 is the operating surplus. The capital sits separately. And so the capital sits and it goes with usually with dedicated reserves and with the gas tax and things like that. And that is parked and that is separate from this 1.2. Correct.
Okay, but can you give me an example, like 1.2 million from the operating budget that's...
So well, it isn't what I just finished saying. So what I'm saying is that let's say there's a $6 million public works budget. They might have been on $6 million, $250,000, $300,000 on the line. That's getting pretty darn close when you're talking about overtime, fuel, machinery, utilities. So they were about there. We'll go through the roll up, but the examples of that is there could be somebody, a non-hired replacement or something like that. It could be they just didn't use all of their advertising dollars or that kind of thing. So we looked at those things going forward, Elisa and I, and basically looked at the historicals and said, listen, if you're not spending it, we're going to take it
No, which is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I know it sounds like a lot when you're looking at individuals. For me, I'd love to have a surplus of $1.2 million. I know what I'd be doing with it right now. And likely it wouldn't be here. But when you're looking at 38 million, in operating expenses, and you spread that out over time, and sometimes, Councillor Pellerin, it's not necessarily money not spent. It could be additional revenues that were kicked back from the Eau Chateau from the surplus they had that wasn't factored in. So there's about, I don't know, I think 4,000 or 5,000 line items that we have with respect to our accounting. So it could be anywhere.
I will just say that there was a large chunk that actually came from both interest earned and supplemental taxes that were, so
Say-
we've got, yeah. So it was
How much?
additional revenue. So you will see that those revenue lines moved.
Yeah.
Without flipping screens, because I get really scared about doing that when I'm doing a shared screen, about 300,000, about a quarter of it came from those 2 points
See, there you
alone.
go, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's not people not doing what they were given the money to do. That's just, so. Okay, the highlights for 2023, that's a small screen for people in TV land to watch, but the overall trends, all departments were operating within budget. Okay, we're proud to say that, but I don't think that's overly negotiable. When we get really tight on budgets, it gets to be a little bit more difficult to manage, but between myself, the directors, Elisa, and the oversight that we have on expenditures, that, we kind of assume that'll happen. Utilities were higher than usual, the heating cost. Our fuel costs have stabilized now compared to a few years. Our goods and materials, inflation is hitting us too, right? And so those are the challenges that we're facing and we continue to face. And then our revenue streams with revenue increases and policy discussions or policy decisions that we brought to council have had impacts on revenues as well. With respect to general government, or as she indicated, she being Ms. Craddock, sorry, she. General government, the billing on the supplemental and omitted taxes have exceeded budget. In large part, this represents changes in new construction. So, I know everybody's wondering about our economic development and our, and the initiatives that the municipality has undertaken, but without putting a pin on a specific area, we still do very well with respect to construction and new construction in either residential and or commercial. So this is still an area that is, I'm going to say, more vibrant than neighbors, to put it mildly. So,
Yes, we're ahead of North Bay. And then,
I don't know, I don't know if I want to compete directly with
No, I
North
was just-
Bay, but yeah,
I read about it.
I don't want to name a couple of municipalities, but yeah. Anyway, so now I'm going to get into okay, hello. There'll be some continued supplemental building in 2023. Okay, so interest income as well. Our interest rates are higher and we benefit from that. Public works fluctuate greatly due to seasonal variations, therefore don't have the smooth budget to actual trend. Areas of concern where they exceeded were fleet expenses, including repairs and maintenance, fuel, et cetera, contractor operating expenses. They've seen enhanced revenue, really that's culverts and the like, but there might be room to look at overages. An early start to winter through November and December could result in challenges to the overall public works budget, because we're not at the end yet. So, but that would just affect the surplus. So let's just continue to pray for nice weather. Community services exceeded revenue expectations on program revenues, which is really positive from a community perspective to know that people are getting back to normal and starting to avail themselves of value-added services in West Nipissing, services that we offer and probably other services. So post-COVID, hopefully, is a thing of the past. Due to the high water concerns, the marina had a delayed start that impacted on fuel sales, but that's negligible. Because community services deals with a majority of the facilities, they're impacted by the heating costs those utility costs. And then there's other areas where they've underspent, and Elisa and I, working with staff, address that in the future budget. Fire run absolutely perfectly. I've got nothing but positive things to say. They're under the best leadership I've ever seen in my. Did you make this? Anyway, so they get revenue. They have thanks to Frank's leadership, have been watching different things and been getting Ministry of Transportation revenue, and Frank's been on top of recaptures, which is great. So that's exceeded, right?
Absolutely.
I have bifocals, but they don't work. They've covered some insurance proceeds as well, so from Firemark. So when there's a fire, a structure fire, and there are components in the individual's insurance to repay some of the fire costs, and we've been undertaking that when it's been feasible. So that's been working out. The vehicle maintenance is trending under budget, and they remain under budget. A couple of reasons. Again, they always kind of did, but under Frank's leadership too, they've really enhanced preventative maintenance strategies. And so we'll be continuing to benefit from that. Planning and building, they had a strong 2023, as it says. 3 quarters are almost full. They've almost reached their entire projections. They will exceed revenues and finish in a surplus position. The official plan review and zoning bylaw have not yet been started. The official plan review was budgeted as a 2-year project. So again, as I talk to you with respect to human resource constraints as to how we're structured, we're hopeful that what we're doing administratively, and what I spoke to you about, was realigning the resources so we can pull these things off a little bit easier. Because right now we have too few people doing too much. The special projects in ECDEV are awaiting confirmation for funding. Any questions up to date? Sound like a talking head. Lee Byrne.
Wait, on the building and planning and going back to the general government. And back, so I was reading for the province, it's 41 billion of new assessment. What's our share in the West Nipissing?
I don't have that number for you right off the top, but I can certainly get what our new assessment has been. Yeah. And that contributes to that, additional supplemental billing and stuff like that. But yeah, I can get you what
Well, you
our,
can just multiply it a little bit as a order of magnitude. If you have 300 and some thousand of additional billing, you can probably attack by minimum
Yeah, but it depends.
a factor of
Depends if it's a house or it's a.
most of our growth still stays within residential. We have seen some commercial growth over the last few years. Like we do have a trend with commercial growth, but the bulk of our assessment still remains residential. But so to Jay's point, if our tax rate is 1%, then you just add a couple zeros. But I will get you the actual number.
Yeah, because that should have that
They
number.
do. Yep.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
We can get it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we can get it internally.
Yeah.
Just by doing a math calculation. We probably can get it today while she's playing with the number, I bet.
I don't want to do it on a share screen because I'm always afraid I put the wrong thing up on the screen and suddenly,
But yeah, and then, so then new assessment on existing dwellings, though, is a whole different discussion. We don't go grab that automatically. So if, your palace on the lake, Nipissing, I won't say where you live, but let's say you have a massive increase in assessment. Well, on average, what we do is we lower the tax rate to collect the same level of funds. So it's a notional tax rate. We don't automatically grab and say, okay, that's easy for our budgeting and we'll go spend more. It's a relative thing. What drives the tax rate is our needs here multiplied by the total assessment. So if in a year we don't need as much and the assessment goes up, then that tax rate number will go down. So
So they haven't reassessed in quite a few years and they're not planning to. So
no,
it's-
they should be in
it's a
24.
number,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we know exactly how much more money we have for 1 year.
Well, when they reassess, we don't go grab it that way. No.
No, but they don't reassess, and they won't.
They will in 24 though. Like, so they're planning on doing a reassessment. Yeah.
We'll see, yeah. We'll see.
Well, that's what the province is saying.
Yeah, that's, okay.
So with our reserve position that's projected, that we're, as a starting point on November 18th, again, it's a rounding up because of the, so that's a soft number, but it's a conservative number as well, because when she put the 1.2, I asked her to not overguess that. So we're looking at around 5.1 million, right? 5,118,000. And so that's our starting point. From my perspective, it's about where it should be. It's a fairly healthy place around that area. So we're actually, our reserve position is going up. The other thing, that you should be aware of is, okay, we dropped it down from 1.5 Reliance to 1.2, but we also, in the OPP transition, had a plan and kind of self-finance through our reserves some of the transition costs. So there was a pay down of $600,000 that are 657,000 as well that was repaid to it, right? And this year in your budget, we're almost done that, but we're also in this year's budget going to be adding a little over $200,000 through the police repayment. Then we'll be done, and then we'll be just, that amount will come down with respect to your policing costs will come down by that amount. Any questions on the reserve? Either on borrowing or really taking. Our debt position, our overall municipal debt position is approximately $15 million. The municipal portion of that is approximately $11,300,000. And the water and sewer portion is about 3.7 million. The majority of our municipal debt, the larger ticket item, is still paying off the police building. So with that, just, that's tied to revenues too, right? So we get 50% payment back on that from the province. Other big ticket items, Lisa?
Yeah, so on the municipal debt, 9 million of it does belong to the police building. Sorry, 9 million, does belong to the police building, and as Jay said, half of that is recoverable from the province. The rest of the debt is the ambulance bay is still on there. It's a fairly large chunk, though it's coming down.
That too is a repayment from DSAT.
Yep, yeah. There was community services projects over a couple of years that are kind of about halfway through their financing. Nothing else is actually, it's a lot of smaller amounts that have, there's not other significant ones that are large amounts other than the building.
But to sell to council, to allay their fears, that $11 million is actually quite good when you think of the fact that almost $9.5 million of that is actually tied to a revenue, which is not taxation, right? So, or at least half of that. So yeah, not to exaggerate, but there's at least $5.5 million that are covered by other revenues to pay that back. So really on the type of assets that we have, which our asset management plan is what? I'm just gonna 150 million-ish.
I should know that number, Jay, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Elisa.
I know.
We have assets right now. So anyway, we're doing pretty well from the debt to equity position. Sewer and water,
Good question.
no, it's great.
moi, je suis l'impression que the municipality cannot go in a deficit, right? How does that work? Like, if we owe this money, technically, we are in a deficit?
No,
Comment ça marche?
No, the municipality cannot run per se annual deficits. You can't carry over annual deficits over the course of terms. But those are usually operating deficits. So basically, the municipality is allowed to incur debt. In fact, the province encourages it if you're trying to download to us. But your ability to repay debt, there's a formula for that, and it's actually crazy aggressive, but it basically amounts that your annual repayment can't exceed 25% of your own source revenues. So in our case, our own source revenues would be approximately, let's say, 25 million for argument's sake. So 25% of that would be around $6 to $8 million per year in repayment. I think ours is like 800. So we're way, way, way within the thresholds. We're not even close to the limit. And I'm an aggressive finance guy, like I'm fast and loose, but even I would never go near there. That would be way too dependent on debt. But we're quite healthy and they're coming down.
Okay.
So, water and sewer though, Elisa? We used to have like 10 million, 12
Oh, yeah,
million
water and
now
sewer
coming
is coming down,
They
yeah,
were
yeah.
distressing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's almost stuff that's finishing off, or is
So
that
water
like
is-
the new loans for like John Street?
No, because that's all, that was grant, so no, that's all still those original water and sewer loans, so yeah, it's just the 3.7, and we've hit the tipping point where it starts to drop fast, you got past the point where you're just paying only interest, it is starting to come down fast, yeah, I think we've got one that is 2027, the others are kind of maybe 2030 that the loans are done for water and sewer,
Do you know what they are, just for council's notification? Is it still Comriff?
Two of them are Comriff. And so there's, actually on the last page of your whole budget document, you've got the loan breakdown. So the 700,000 and the 270,000, those are both Comriff loans. And then there's still 2.7 on that original large loan. There was kind of that transition stuff.
What's a
Oh.
loan?
Comriff was, like being the historian here, but back in 2006, we redid all of the roads here in Sturgeon Falls proper, and we separated storm in that. So 2007, 2008. So when we repaved all of those roads, Parker and all of that, and we put piping in, it was an 11 or 12 million dollar project. And so our deal, or our portion of that was like 30%. And so we're still paying that now. Next slide. So the key budget changes. So again, I guess the older I get, the more I want to simplify things and want to make things strategic. I'll say this, and then council will feel free to ask any drill down question. But first of all, what I do like from an administrator's perspective of dealing with a budget this way is it forces council to go strategic at budget to budget documents, saying, hey, did you spend all of that on pencils? Where did that gravel go? So we have controls for that. And so we look at that and we basically, set our budgeted amounts. But if we were to give you the actuals this year, they're all over the map because you have historical expenditures. Sometimes there's, like, it doesn't, let's say you have 100,000 in a line item, it doesn't go 8,000, 8,000, 8,000. It's a seasonal thing. And sometimes you're buying gravel or sand only in November, December. And you'd say, oh, why aren't you spent in that? It's because we haven't spent it yet. So rather than that, this is a better way to go. The other thing too, got this from 25 years ago when I used to the treasurer there from Rayside, is looking at as a strategic perspective, what makes up the changes in the budget for 2024? Where are the where are the material changes that you should be aware of? And so that's why we'll talk about that. We also did an attempt a little bit to align the term plan pillars with the documents as well to the degree that we could. So factors impacting all, obviously heating costs. So yes, Melanie, wear a sweater. But this year's the year of, so we're not going to incur any more heating, and we're buying staff mitts and sweaters. And we'll see, their typing skills should suffer though. So increased heating cost is a change, but that's distributed overall. All right, insurance costs are really starting to, the entire industry, I know it's starting to come up at AMO. They're looking back to maybe the cooperatives. Back when I started, there was a cooperative called the Roma Insurance Cooperative. But the problem with that is once you're out of it, you pay forever, because if there's a claim while you were under it, that happened in Timmins and they had to settle for 50 million, you were on the hook for it here in West Nipissing. So it was really, 10 years later. So it's really, it's good on the front end where you can pool your resources, but when you start having to pay claims, it gets pretty nasty. So, but we're going to be looking at that. The mayor.
Just have a question on that, please.
Sure.
And for insurance for municipalities, it's really limited in the number of providers that are out there providing the type of insurance. Like,
Yes.
it's difficult to find competitive
Yeah.
quotes or get people to bid against each other.
We are planning on doing that, though, Your Worship. I'm going to guess, but on average, it goes from 1 to 3 to 4 providers. Lloyd's of London, there's,
Intact does,
right?
does Intact also do public entities
No.
insurance?
They're not underwriters. No, there's Phoenix. There's a few of them. I haven't been in it for a while. We have shopped BFL.
Some of our stuff's with BFL and some of it is with, some of it got moved last year. It's not all with BFL.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One other question, and how are our claims, like, is it a claim history issue or it's just an expense that's
No, so our
very
claims,
common among?
our claims, they say are reasonable compared to kind of the municipal sector, that they were kind of average. I mean, we do see a number of claims a year. But, a lot of the claims end up sort of being resolved as nuisance claims, but the nuisance claim threshold on what a payout on a nuisance claim is increasing, and it takes all the legal time to get to a payout on a nuisance claim. So no, and our broker has said last year and kind of given us a heads up this year that they say the market is softening, but their opinion of softening and better rates is not the same as my opinion of better rates. So it is just a market issue.
Yeah, it's a history. It's a municipal infrastructure or public sector infrastructure history issue. So when you're seeing all of those floods in Kamloops and all of that, and oh my God, that also affects us. Yeah. Planning and building, we're converging. So this is the net impact of the apportionment of Mr. Sharm's thing, but the adjustment is a conversion, and so there's moving from part of that salary to general government and then replacing it. So there's a conversion to a full-time planner, and we've already talked about the effectiveness of what that will be, which additional revenue based on rate increase was implemented mid-year 2023. So we're accounting for that. We're decreasing the training. I know I said that we don't want to, but in some cases, it's not still being utilized. It was an excessive amount. So, and again, guess my view, just as a CAO, a person who knows where the money should go and not go based on what council needs, given what the amount the council wants. I've taken upon myself to be really popular with these folks and saying, no, it's not cutting. So this is the year of being creative with what you have and trying to get as much done with the human resources that are realigned. Set that up and let's move. So that's why we cut it down from, I think it was 10.66 to 5.3, and then wherever council wants to go from there. Decrease in training as well due to change in collective agreement language. So that is something that just frees up where we're doing more in-house training and not have to pay for external. Increase in the transfer to fleet reserve is a strategic direction, of course, but we have historically picked on fire. Even two chiefs priors, fire has always had a certain need to get to a level of expenditure to replace their fleet, and we've always kind of dragged that in there again. So we're not providing the full increase that was contemplated. There you have it. Increase in revenue related to highway incidences. I think that we're grabbing his success from this year, and we're budgeting for it as continued success. So they won, the one enhancement that he's had, hopefully we can make it standard. This is, I think, is positive as well. Bylaw, the addition of a part-time bylaw enforcement officer. These are strategic directions of council, but has you've been aware, with redundancy right now, or contingency planning, and B, where the world has gotten a little different in West Nipissing recently, where our bylaw enforcement has had to spend much more time on individual files, given the nature of those files and the social aspects of certain files versus other files. So some of the other stuff, council wants to see, parking enforcement and the like. We just need some support. So, Public Works.
I have a question on the bylaw, please.
Sure.
Is there any accounting in the budget later on, and you can just say yes, we can go over it later, to expect additional revenues be generated by the creation of a second bylaw position? Because, we've obviously talked about there being a balance between bylaw being able to generate revenue off of the enforcement of certain files. And so I just want to get an idea of how that might impact revenues in that area.
Thanks. Conceptually, quick answer is no. Conceptually, though, it's something we can look at. I'm always loath to start adding theoretical issues. I mean, we can, to satisfy a budget, but I don't know that we've had a lot of data with the one bylaw enforcement officer as well to really know what that number will be. And so I'd rather err on the side of conservatism, but did you add any?
I did not know, and that, exactly as I said, things have changed so much, and we've always used our bylaw for things other than bylaw, a lot of neighbor dispute, things that don't generate revenue. And so with, just the part year of our current full-time bylaw, we haven't hit revenue. So I was kind of making the assumption that perhaps we will get back to that, but yeah.
We didn't hit revenue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Public Works, addition of a part-time employee to better support winter maintenance. So that'll be a strategic direction I will explain later. Reallocation of project management to capital. So that's actually a positive, but it's just basically we're realigning project management to the actual capital expense that it should go into. An increase in contractors. Again, just, we contract a certain amount and the costs are getting higher. Again, increase in materials, rising cost, increase in vehicle expense related to repairs and maintenance. We're still trying to get on top of that. So we're always lagging. an increase in transfer to fleet reserve to match longer-term fleet replacement schedule. Again, they asked for a lot more. I cut it in half. Just not trying to sound like a hero or whatever, but when we're getting into financing things, I'd love to be the appropriate long-range planner, but it would cost the municipality probably a 5% increase in taxes to be able to get there. So that's why we had to reduce it. Increase in transfer for infrastructure reserve, and that's the roads, that's your capital. So we're asking for an additional 275. Community services, increase in wages for return to full week operation and full programming at the Wisconsin complex. Basically, we're back post-COVID, and so we need to just appropriately staff that building to match the hours. It's an increased level of service that is now in place that wasn't in place for the last 3. Decrease in training to reflect more training opportunities. They haven't been using it. Sustainable decrease in hydro costs at facilities due to investment in energy savings. Transfer of computer replacement from operating to capital. So that's just a total amount. So again, we're looking at our line items and knowing what they had there and what they don't need. So, or what we say they don't need. General government, an increase in supplemental buildings, and a decrease in cost because we're transferring our whole phone system to a separate system here that'll increase our reliance on Bell. So that should be a savings. Then these levies are estimates. So the DSAT, it's not a percentage increase here, but is this a strategic secret discussion here? The assumption, I believe, is 4%. The Oshawato's assumption is 3%. The health unit's assumption is 4%. And the animal control is based on a contract that's a long-term contract. Any questions for that?
As we roll. We can put back up on the, or
No comments?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No comments?
Just after seeing that levies section, makes me realize like that's 430,000. And 200,000 is a percent. So alone, just in levies, we're already at 2%, right? So that other 3.3 doesn't seem too crazy as of right now when you consider that a lot of it's just already allocated to these levies. But I'll let you keep going, Barbara. That's just my comment.
Fantastic comment. So again, as I indicated, it really ties into, realign resources in areas to better meet council's term planning needs. We are in the process, as you indicate, as you've seen in September, to continuously revisit the term plan at the staff level and to make sure that people are moving kicking the ball forward, or whatever the expression would be, to move it along, so that we're going to be trying to get everything done from the term plan. I know the mayor has spoken to me on several occasions. I just couldn't see fitting it in this transitional year budget, but I think that we need to find this part of policy, time to review at the council level the term plan and make adjustments to that term plan. I'm not sure that in the first year of setting it up would have been the right thing too, but I think that after a budget's been approved, if there's some adjustments for future budgets, we'd be looking at it. So, but we're still trying to, it's still very early for staff. If you're amending term plans that quickly, then it really loses its effectiveness with respect to having us all align our resources in a certain manner. So I don't know, Lisa, if you want to look at some of the specifics, you want to talk about general a little bit,
Yeah.
budget by budget, department by department, maybe do mayor and council and corporate services.
Page 20? The first part of the budget work there is also part of that presentation, so you've seen all that, it's all that highlights, all that stuff again. So, this doesn't include any potential, changes that might come from a review of council remuneration. This just does take, so council's, salaries change based on November CPI. CPI has been a little bit more stable. So I've just, again, estimated it based on September CPI. But the big difference here is that education line. So moving from 20,000 to 30,000. And when you look at historical, we've had a lot of things that have changed. We came through several years of COVID where there wasn't any training, and there wasn't any training out of other than virtual training. We've had changes to our travel policy. Council is going to exceed its training budget in 2023. So it just sort of suggested a change to the 10,000, and that was kind of on that strategic change list that Mr. Barbo just went through. The miscellaneous was a new thing that was put in 2023 as sort of just for council to take a look at projects. You will see it on the resolution for Tuesday to transfer, since it wasn't used in 2023, to transfer it into a reserve. And it was sort of along some of those community safety initiatives that might come up. So you will see a request to transfer the 2023 into reserve for 2024 and future projects, but I've left it in there for 2024. So if we flip ahead to corporate services, for the changes there, so the change in taxation is just that new assessment coming in, not any kind of reassessment. As we said, we don't have that reassessment done yet. There is some rumor that it's coming, but it isn't yet. OMPF is dropping just slightly. That's the decrease of 26,500. So that is based on, they've got various formulas for how they calculate, but that is our transfer from the provincial government. Several years ago, they made some really hard cuts and then they gave us some back. So it's one of those ones that I'm always cautious about. I think a $26,000 decrease, at least it's not anything bigger than that. Grants, the change in grants is coming just from the modernization fund that we had, just covering some of those projects that were approved at council.
Yeah, just as a sales pitch, though, I still need to stress the fact that, along Councillor Rivard's comments, is that, when OMPF, which is our government grant, doesn't keep pace with our other rising expenditures, it puts that much more pressure on you folks to go and get, it's like a downloading, right? It's like it puts that much more pressure on the taxation to go and make up for it. So that, you wouldn't, let's say if it was rising and we were rising and our expenses were rising by 3%, they gave us a 3% increase as opposed to that decrease. That would amount to probably in the order of 1% or something like that. Yeah, because of went there, maybe a little less. So you would already be at about a 4.6% if you didn't have to eat the OMPF decrease. So that's an uncontrollable, Chris. Oui, Fern.
Oui, c'est quoi que la province se base dessus pour payer ce montant-là?
Il y a un formulaire, une calculation en termes de où tu es situé, ce qui est à palier simple, a single tier or not. northern opportunities. There's other issues with respect to policing, I think, that's calculated into that. There's a variety of factors. But overall, as an overall policy statement, the province has said they want to reduce their transfers globally to municipalities. And so they're just slowly been over the last 5 years. I haven't seen an increase in the OMPF and easily, it was frozen for a long time, so I'd probably say 7 years at least.
So they clawed it back during the win period, and then they gave us a bump probably just at the end of her term to kind of stabilize it again, and then you know, we did the transition. So it's been probably about 6
But just so
years.
you know, strategically, that puts extra pressure on the budget then, right? So,
Since that time, as you change the model, is there more opportunity to go get grants since they've done that way or
No.
no?
No, and OMPF is designed to cover operating expenses, whereas grants are typically geared towards capital investment. And so it would be a mismatch anyways, but no, they haven't, we haven't
yeah.
of course had a corresponding. They just, when they bring out new grants, they've just reallocated funds from a different granting program. It's just, they're just moving money
Yeah,
around.
nothing has changed there. So
Yeah.
you have your gas tax that came in. Those that have transit buses, transit systems get a little bit more, and those that don't get a little bit less. And then you have what's called OSIF, you know, and those kind of things. But they're your only stable. And then everybody says, oh, go get grants. But then, you know, you say, oh, let's get a grant for this project. But is that our biggest need for that project? So then it puts council and staff in a competitive thing because they're not going to give you every grant that comes up, and you're not going to win everyone too. And once they've politically given West Nipissing something and they can take their picture by the mayor and cut a ribbon, then they're going to move on and try and get their bang for their buck elsewhere. So it looks really good when FedNor and NOHFC are going around doing that, but it doesn't sustain, it's not sustainable to us. So we can't count it on it as a budget revenue. We can just go and get it as a value added after.
No, I was just remembering when we had the report from, I think it was called
KPMG, yeah.
KPMG. They were saying in there that we were behind in applying for grants compared to other municipalities, if I'm not mistaken.
They spoke about actually the opposite in some of our capital as far as the over-reliance on grants, and that we fund our capital so much through grants, and that when those grants dry up or change, that we're left vulnerable. Off the top of my head, I don't recall. There may have been reference to some of those special grants, but I know that they talked about the over-reliance on grants.
Yeah, and I would run just, and I would argue, you know, I have never been a grant chaser for the sake of it because it doesn't factor in sustainability. And so what they'll do is they'll help fund the capital, but you're not factoring in such as Minnehaha Bay and the increased cost and a beautiful place, but the increased liability on us when we get these things. And so, you know, these one-time grants where we all feel good, we have to be able to get ready because now your assets have grown that much more and you got to start paying for them.
So then the really big change there on corporate services is that increased budgeted interest income, and that's to reflect what's going on right now. So we get interest income not just from our bank account, but we also get interest income from power generation and environmental services, who we hold long-term debt from the two corporations, more substantially from power gen. So there's a significant portion there from that is interest on long-term debt. Interdepartmental is just a little bit of reallocation that we do with, particularly with IT, and so it's revenue on corporate services, but it's expense within our other departments. The salaries and wages change is just our collective agreement changes, a little bit of the shift of realigning our people. We had some people, some positions, sorry, I shouldn't say people, some positions in 2023 that were just part year budgeted. So we now have them as full year budgeting, again, in our IT position, and the rest just kind of flows from there. That IT support, again, that's just part of that reallocation between departments that results in some of that revenue up top. Decrease in repairs and maintenance, mostly because it's actually shifted to community services manages, repairs and maintenance in this building and that it belongs more in their budget. We have a small amount just for our space here, but the rest belongs in their budget. The decrease in utilities and communication was in that highlights, and that we're rolling over to an entirely new phone system, probably in December, so that we expect to see substantial savings with the new phone system.
I just under operating costs, I noticed that you have 0 for election costs. And I thought we had spoken in the past about apportioning the expected election costs over each of the 4 years so that we wouldn't be hit.
And so that actually
It's a
sits,
large bill.
that actually sits down in the transfers to reserve. So that line shouldn't be showing for you at all. That's actually for when the years when we actually have elections. But yes, the transfer to reserve part is in there. It is just in a different section.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Just, it was a little quick there on the revenues.
Yep.
And I noticed sale of land, did that include like that cash pay trailer part? It's just got a dash through it.
Yeah, and so, and again, I just clean up my templates that I give to our communication folks. We don't typically budget for sale of land, and that it's kind of asset to asset, and it's kind of, one-off, and if you budget. So we don't typically budget for sale of land. Sometimes at year end, you will see transactions for, if gain on sale of things, so that if we've sold things for more than our book value is, that becomes revenue. And so the Cache Bay Trailer Park, again, is gonna come out, it's gonna go, to reserve. It's not part of our general revenues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And
Oh,
is that the same for the other pieces of land that we've sold? So we sold and sold. So we had a parcel in River Valley. We had the parcel just off Ottawa Street. I'm trying to think if we've done any others, but there were a couple other smaller transactions for land sales as well. And those are treated in the same way as the Cache Bay Trailer Park.
So that if we have sold land for more than book value, then yes, it is. So we actually will sometimes see those in revenue things. What we're doing with Cache Bay, and we need to actually have a good policy on land. What we're doing with Cache Bay is actually the correct way to do it. Historically, you may have seen some small amounts at year end come into revenue from just that difference. But what we're doing with Cache Bay is the correct accounting process for it.
Yeah, as Ms. Craddock or Elisa, let's be informal on Saturday, as Elisa has indicated, I don't believe that, paying your credit card with your mortgage or with your equity is a good idea, right? And so any sale of asset like that shouldn't, and may, from an accounting perspective, need to be recognized in your operating or your income statement, but it should be pulled out immediately and put into a land fund or something, maybe different than the general reserve, but pulled aside so that, if we're going to be selling an asset, council needs to make the strategic decision as to what to do with the proceeds and how to reinvest it where. Then I would argue this isn't the time for it, but all of our needs are prioritized through West Nipissing. And if I sold the arena in Verner, doesn't mean Verner gets it. If I sold this building, doesn't mean Sturgeon gets it. It's a council decision as to how we want to reinvest it financially.
So I'm just still unclear on smaller pieces of property. And I guess I want to be a little bit more clear because I think that there may be other occasions next year and the year after that, whether it's the property.
But to answer you, all
So-
pieces of property should be going into a property reserve.
Okay, so even if it's $10,000 or $12,000, I just want to get an idea how that money comes in, how it shows, and then what's done with it, because I
From a balance sheet perspective, let's say the book value of Cache Bay Trailer Park was 600, right? And we sold it for 761. She would have to recognize an increase on the proceeds of the sale.
okay.
But the other issue is converting an asset to cash.
Okay,
It's just.
so our assets decrease because the book.
Well, your
I-
fixed asset decreases and your variable or your short-term
Yes.
asset increases, so.
Yeah.
That's an
the-
accounting
the
conversation.
Asset itself is lost as a permanent
Yeah.
asset. and-
I had to dust off 1985 accounting knowledge. That,
Okay, those were my questions, I think.
Just on the same subject, we did have in the budget, the resource and manpower from the trailer park. I guess that just goes back into the budget and it's reallocated on the operational section, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, so, I mean, there's two ways, that you're budgeting. You're looking at last year and you're looking at your needs for this year. So technically, we found an efficiency in our operating with respect to the management of the trailer park. Yeah, absolutely. So that is not an expense that's contemplated for 2024. That being said, when the director working with his people get their budget together, what you have is a net of all of that anyway. And then really the incremental HR savings, unless you're actually cutting a body on that, which that wasn't enough work for like an FTE, that stays into our system. We're just more efficient mowing lawns or doing something else.
Okay, thank you.
So just so I'm clear, so next year or whenever it's gonna show in a reserve, maybe not in the full reserve, we're gonna see the full amount. We sold a park of 760,000. It's gonna show in that reserve for that full amount.
Net, whatever expenses, whatever the proceeds were, let's say if there were legal cost and our cost of transferring. So there'll be a project after our expenses, that's, so we're dealing with whatever the cost to sell it, whatever. So there was some advertising cost and all of that, that's deducted from the total price, right?
Do we have some, just for an example, that we sold in the previous year?
In my time here, we haven't sold anything on that scale. We've done the little bits and the.
Just land, little land surplus
Yeah,
stuff.
so we,
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
so we don't have a reserve for property sales set up at this point. I said it is sort of a policy that we need to have in so that as if council is going to look at disposing of other things and start sort of, getting rid of the stuff we don't need, then we should have a good policy on what happens afterwards.
Right now, what we're doing is we're logically or conceptually thinking about what we should have with respect to the policy. So the money right now is there. It hasn't been assigned. If in the lack of having that specific, I'm setting up a land asset policy, it's right now going to form part of general reserve, but it is not forming part of the 1.2. It's been set aside and we have it. It's just that it's not being recognized anywhere. So in our reserve or in our dedicated reserve presentations to you on Public Works has 350 for their trucks and this, that, and the other thing, there'll be a land reserve and that'll have an amount in it.
So it's not in it right now, like the mayor was asking, just a little piece of property. Right now, we don't have a reserve for that,
Correct.
but we will.
Right.
Okay.
So we can carve out all of the, land out and create, net of expenses and park that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's.
I suggest we'll probably, just thinking out loud, I mean, I think she's fairly busy right now, I'm not sure. But, probably early December, we can rough out at least something to allow her to park it that way.
So we need to bring in a new policy?
We'll be bringing it in early December, a reserve policy for that.
Okay, thank you.
Back to you.
Yep, and there's not much more on the general government or corporate services side. So transfer to reserve, and that's where part of the part of that is the election transfer to reserve. Contribution from reserve, a little bit increase for the current year. There is reserve funds for that. The payment on loan is just part of community services and corporate services split the cost of the ambulance bay loan. So that's why it stays stable in that part. The role of Public Works?
Just a sec, I think the mayor had a thought. Oh, don't look like you have a thought then. So you know what, and I apologize, but Ms. Henning, of course, when we converted that position, had already had plans. So in the place for Ms. Henning is going to be Ms. Craddock and Mr. Barble. Go ahead.
So Public Works gets revenue from intercompany. They do some billing back with environmental services and aggregates. So we get a percentage of the licensing fee that goes on with gravel that's extracted from our municipality. And that's what is usually in that line as far as budgeting. Change to salaries and wages. So that again is the change of kind of structure that council looked at, as well as just our collective agreement changes. Now, if you remember the highlights, there was an ask for $30,000 of part-time staff to help assist with winter maintenance. And that 30,000 is just to look at when, somebody calls in sick, then we've got someone who is a 0 to 24 that we can call in. So we don't suddenly have to be doubling up on overtime in order to get all the runs done. It's not extra staff if everybody's here, but it's to cover those one-off things, particularly during the winter. Someone has a family member pass away and they're out for 4 days, and suddenly it means that the rest of the workforce right now is therefore doubling up on all those winter runs. So a part-time pool would assist that. It actually doesn't have an impact on the Public Works budget, because the line beneath that in the strategic decisions was reallocating. We have a part-time project manager, our engineer, who has been sitting in their budget, but he more correctly now belongs in the capital. He's only managing projects both for Public Works and water and sewer. So, there's not a payroll increase for that 30,000 because we're reallocating the 32. So it doesn't hit the operating. You see that? It is a strategic decision for council though. And I realize now I'm talking very fast and I'm going to tone it down just a moment. But it is,
I didn't notice.
But it is a decision for council to look at, but with the transition of the project manager part-time wages out to capital, that's then funded from reserves, that's funded, but it is something for council to take a look at.
Just on that project management, it's assigned there too, but as I indicated, that I think that project management type of position that we're fortunate to have will now be also assisting community services on some of their construction projects as well. So without naming names, that individual has spoken to Steph with respect to alleviating the Johnny Belanger's work.
And so there is a budgeted increase.
For
I'll go after.
I'm not, okay, on salaries and wages, I remember a few years ago, we hired a mechanic for Public Works. Mechanic's not there anymore. Does that reflect?
So the
position is still there.
Yeah.
We're just having a hard time filling it.
I know the position's still there, but the body's not there, so there's no money being paid.
But the intention is still to fill it. So we've been working, and there's some other projects on that, dealing with the fire department and one of their bays and all of that. One of the issues was appropriately equipping so that we can properly manage it internally, and finding the proper location for that. So there's an active project with respect to that before we just hire. But if we start reducing things we don't need, then we're on a variable budget basis. You can reduce that if the intention is forget about it, but then it'll be that much harder to bring it back. So that's why there are some vacancies in our HR that are not there right now, but that have been decisions made by this council or past.
Is there a way to find out the amount of staff, let's say, 5 years ago compared to today.
Yeah,
Department by department.
yeah.
Because in my head, I'm just, nothing much has changed in
No.
the municipality. We have 2 arenas, we got road.
Nor has the staffing, Councillor Pellerin.
Hey,
Nor has the staffing.
no,
I can show you I can show you a seniority list in 2005 and you can count the names and I'll show you a seniority list now if that'll make you feel better.
yeah, I'd like to see that if that's possible.
Yep. Yeah, we're not increasing compliments that way, just so you know. If you look at Werner, I think there's 4 working there, 4 in whatever, and then you have a complement of about 7 here working. So they're not 7 or 8. There's still about 20 employees in Public Works, and there was back when I started.
No, same with the management.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like,
Sure. Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had a question along the same lines, but just with that 30K, I think it's a great idea because it's, we hear so much from constituents about weather, road, winter, snow conditions and clearing and that kind of stuff. So it's great to have that support. And I appreciate going back to Mr. Remillard's presentation a little while ago about how it works and the clarification there. Do we have individuals, and I don't know if you know the answer, but we're talking about staffing and filling stuff, and this is for part-time, right? So it's not,
Right.
but do we have a pool of people who we could, or this is something that we're projecting, and if we need to, we'll.
Madam Chair, or if we're just informal here, we left it. There was a decision made of consolidating part-time to have full bodies or whatever. It's almost cyclical, that might have worked for that point. It was a short-term win, but it's always good to have a pool of people that don't mind being zero, retirees with their DZ who've had experience and that kind of thing, or just there on call. We do use that kind of format in environmental services, where when some of our landfill operators are done, we have retired public works people that come and can't make it in. So we do have those kind of contingencies, but right now we don't in public works.
It's good because I understand too from my employment, I'm sure others around the table, it's so difficult to fill positions these days, and part-time is probably even harder than full-time. So, yeah, I just
I
want
guess conceptually, the idea would be this would be a reduction on OT as well, right?
right, yeah.
And a maintenance of service, because even if we wanted to give OT, sometimes the NTO limit on the amount you can work a day limits your ability to assign work for those who've been fully deployed. So this helps.
Okay, thanks.
Follow-up questions on Public Works is that, a calculation, when we add subdivisions, we're adding roads and we're adding work, but we don't add staff. Am I correct by saying that? So we're adding more things, more workload to the Public Works Department, but we're not keeping tab on, we've got 20 kilometers more road, maybe that's a part-time staff automatically or not. We're not doing that currently.
Not from that's a very interesting way of saying it, really. And we don't do it that way. We do it on a more of a basis of altering runs and the ability to do it within minimum maintenance. And so, everything we have done into all of our growth has come at an expense to the delivery options. And then sometimes, yes, there'll be more staff to handle council needs on community services and that. And sometimes we'll come and we'll ask you for an additional public works employee. That rarely happens. So they do a lot more with less, and they're very efficient. Some of that too is kudos to the managers who are there now. They come in with a set of expertise and fresh set of eyes from 2015, and they provided some efficiencies on runs and how they operate as well. They sometimes consolidate in a certain area and move that to that new subdivision and then maybe contract out a little bit more that way. But they've been very good with the resources they have.
Thank you.
So then with the, sort of looking at the operating costs, we do see that increase to contractor line. We had certainly in 2023 saw some significant increases in our local contracts, both with, sweeping being a large part of that amount, but just overall with contractors. Materials, as Mr. Barrow spoke earlier, that just reflects increased costs in granular and our sand that we've seen in kind of the last couple of years there. And again, most of these highlights we've already talked about, vehicle expenses and all the rest. And these are just, these aren't new additions. It's just the rising costs that we're seeing with operations. Transfer to reserve. We did look at there is sort of an increase asked in transfer to reserve. So that 475 you see in transfer to reserve is both for equipment and fleet, as well as the infrastructure. So we've moved the transfer to reserve for equipment up to 850,000. Kind of looking at today's cost, they need kind of about 1.1 million as a sustainable number in their fleet capital planning. Understanding we can't get there all in one year. We've added just the 200 to get them kind of partially there. It is something that's going to need to kind of keep moving. And then contribution for reserve for the infrastructure was an increase of 275. And when we bring capital plans, we start to bring you some of the 5-year and some of the longer term, the roads need studies coming to council next Tuesday. Our infrastructure deficit is significant in public works. It's across the board, but it is significant in public works. And so again, we're just starting to kind of keep moving that line till we get to a sustainable level. Fortunately, the last couple of years, gas tax and OCIF, Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, have been stable and have been sort of not based on straight projects. And again, those are things that are always kind of a concern to keep an eye on at a political level. I'll always advocate to you guys to make sure that the government knows that we need that stable funding. So our OCIF is just over $1 million and gas tax is just under $1 million. We have traditionally given it almost all to public works. We have sometimes used a little bit of it in water and sewer, but it usually goes all to public works. And so then, the net impact between money coming back in from reserve, use of fundings, and capital expenditures, that all nets out to zero. The actual list of projects and what's coming up and what their list is will come back at a capital discussion.
So depending on how today goes, it's my hope to have that for Thursday. We'll talk about dates.
Drains is just a little standalone one. That's just our municipal drains. Not looking at any increases. It is sort of a year over year. We have this reserve for future drain work that comes along. Superintendent, we get some funding against that. That's just the net. And drain maintenance is just generally our portion. So it's not necessarily the work of drain maintenance that we do. We might do $100,000 of drain maintenance in a year, but what you see here is just our portion of drain maintenance on the budget portion. Municipal drains, the rest of it will get either grant money for or get billed back out to the land. We've had a kind of quiet years because of COVID. 2022 was kind of our first year back into getting drains work done. So we've had a kind of quiet couple of years with drain maintenance.
Yeah, just after drains, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to indicate that we'll break after we're finished with drains and then we can start back on community services.
Refund.
Oui, sur les drain maintenance. 7,500 doesn't seem like much. Is that a routine of cleaning out of catch basin and stuff like this?
Yeah, so let's say again, the 7,500 is just our portion, and again, as we get back into maintenance, we're going to see the same thing happen. That as our contractor costs are increasing, we're going to see it eventually reflected here, because we have had quiet years and we've had a lot of shuffling around and some difficulty with our superintendent bringing more stuff in house. We haven't done as much of that routine maintenance. We are doing more response to projects and problem areas and calls for service. Again, the fortunate part of it is a lot of it is billed back to the residents, or they get grant for if they're farmers. And there's less of it that is directly connected to road.
Yeah, so this is the net where it affects our assessment on a drain infrastructure, right? So just for the benefit of the general council here, so a drain is basically a kind of a cooperative thing where there's a ditch, agricultural area, and then the area requiring drainage has an assessment schedule with everybody who benefits that. The municipality and other road authority, but in this case, the municipality also becomes assessed based on how, our roads impact that drain as well. And so when we started here 20 years ago, most of the discussion was construction of new drains because all of the unincorporated townships such as Laving and the Kirkpatrick and all of those places that had River Valley and all those places, they didn't have the drain program of getting a 2/3 subsidy from the province. So there was a big influx of construction of new drains. Now that is gone. And so that has subsided. And now our shift is going to be towards maintaining the existing drains. And so we have to do that. But it's only the portion of those ditches that the municipality has a benefit to. And so that's why it's not big. So it's much larger than that, but you don't see what we build, Monsieur Fermier Olivier or whatever. Those folks are paying for the majority of the maintenance.
Okay, and the superintendent fees. How does that work? Like, I know now, I think it's if I'm not mistaken, is it Monsieur Limon? That's
John Lindley with K-Smart.
from K-Smart. So it used to be Mr. Beatty. Used to be Mr. Beatty and Werner.
He was a contractor for it. There used to be a drain, I forget the guy's name, but he was Garth,
Necker.
first name was Garth, eh?
Necker.
Necker, yes.
Garth Necker, yeah. So all Monsieur Bitsy was a contractor for, like boots on the ground for K-Smart, but he wasn't the superintendent. The superintendent usually is a professional engineer that has to design the drain and that kind of thing. So it's a different level.
Okay, thanks.
The superintendent fees you see here are also the net. So we get about, it's a 50% grant that we get on our superintendent fees. So that 20,000 includes that
Right.
that net. Now we are in kind of a transition with K-Smart and our internal forces on that, but it is a transition till we get it, entirely there. So that K-Smart is still on board with us.
So the municipality doesn't have its own people to say, okay, we need this or,
So
because from,
We do.
we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have what used to be Monsieur Betsy. We're handling that at the Public Works level now.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I
Yes.
was asking, because it would kind of be a conflict of interest for K-Smart Engineering doing the work on that side and at the same time saying, oh, we need to do this, we need to do this. It all
Yeah,
would
it
be
was a
a
conflict
conflict.
of interest back in the day. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
and break it drains, that's all I've got, yep.
any other questions on drains? Okay, at this point, I'll just propose that we take a short recess. It is right now 25 after, so let's reconvene in, it's 20 minutes. 15 minutes? I'm sorry. Okay, we'll reconvene at quarter to 11. Thank you.
and Mel, what
Okay. Big muffin.
So I'm just put the screen back up here. On page 27 with community services.
Back on.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Good work through the first break. And we are going to move on to page 27 and 44 for community services.
So just a couple changes in revenue there. So this council approved some changes to rental fees, ice rental fees, that we didn't see at the beginning of the year, that we will see towards the end of the year. And so there's a increase to capture some of those increases in 2024 as well. And then $20,000 increase in pool and fitness revenue, again, just sort of does that reflection on our being open the 7 days, getting back into full programming, the swim lessons, all of that. So moving back to that, again, sort of finally being back at that pre-COVID level. On salaries and wages, combination of things here. Again, as mentioned in the highlights, there are increased HR costs with being fully open again. And in the highlights, it talks about the West Nipissing complex, but it is actually the Verner Arena as well that we've got change of hours there. As well, community services did have some of their positions just as a partial year budget for last year. So those positions are now in as full year budgets, plus the routine collective agreements. I should just say, when we look at benefits, again, it's across the board, is that, every year we're seeing changes to CPP, NEI, and those types of benefits. CPP has been actually quite a cost driver over the last couple of years in the benefits as the federal program has been rolled through as far as how they're now going to fund CPP. And as we mentioned, that's that little bit of decrease in the training and education budget. I should be on the next page here as well, instead of looking at my own screen there. So a little bit of changes through the operating costs. You'll see that increase in insurance costs there. And again, that's sort of based on some assumptions. Increase to repairs and maintenance. That is repairs and maintenance, both fleet and facility. The large portion of that is actually facility costs that are in there. Held the line on the community projects. Services and rents, a little bit of decrease in services and rents. Some of that is a reallocation of where items are. Non-taxable capital assets, that's what that non-TCA at the bottom is. And again, some of that's a reallocation of moving computers from operating down to a capital acquisition. The rest of non-taxable capital assets is those smaller things that we replace every year that don't have a threshold to actually be capital assets. So it is some of the gym equipment. It is, small lawn equipment, things like that is what sits in that line generally. So transfer to reserve, again, the increase that you see in the transfer to reserve is just that reallocation of IT from operating to capital to better reflect it. And I've done that in all of the departments, both to actually match, because our IT, the large bulk of our IT work actually under our asset policy does belong on our balance sheet. And the other just to allow for much better long-term planning on replacement. It's almost like fleet replacement. Other than that, sort of held the line on transfers to reserve for community services. Again, when we're looking at their kind of longer term plan, $1 million in today's dollars is about sort of where they need to be on some of their facility stuff. That doesn't include then their fleet and everything else. But again, not being able to do it all in 1 year, and also with the number of projects that they're able to tackle in a single year right now, we held the line on that for now. That is one of those lines that we need to keep an eye on as we bring back 5-year plans and longer term plans. You'll start to see that we need to sort of hit some bigger targets on those. Payments on loans is there. You don't see the interest because the interest component is up in the higher up in the operating portion of things. So this is just a balancing. Payments go up because your interest comes down. And then we've got our actual capital expenditures in 2023. they had a few larger projects. This doesn't include all the sort of the carryover stuff yet because that's sort of booked. This is just sort of the new projects for 2024 that are in there. And again, we'll see that when it comes back with our capital plan.
Yeah, 2023 had a covered roof and that kind of thing, so that's why.
I couldn't hear you.
Oh, 2023 had the covered roof, the field roof and that kind of thing, so larger projects is why there's a big difference.
I just, thank you. I'd just like to ask a question, see if it's possible, just see some will within council as well, therefore, some sort of idea. I know Fish and Wildlife, they take a portion of every membership. It's in an allocated fund to try and help conservation efforts. And then we have stuff like our fitness gym, where I've heard a lot of people, they've reached out to me and they've asked for, you know, some sort of way to make sure that they're going to be guaranteed some new equipment, like some equipment gets refurbished. They pay a membership fee, and this is where they go all the time. And a lot of them have even said they'd be willing to pay an extra $5 a membership fee if it gets allocated into a fund. And then every year there's at least that pool of money that can go back into something like the gym, right? Because I guess some of the equipment gets used a lot, and they want obviously the best equipment that they could have.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that's possible, but it'd be.
Outside of a budget discussion, I think it's a really interesting idea and almost from a community and recreational development, but I think we can probably do that as an added value thing down the line into our pricing policy and that and see. So we have to come back. I don't know that it would affect this per se, but it could still be a standalone, poll them and say, $10 increase of this that goes directly to an equipment fund. That might be a good way and alleviate a lot of stress for the administration there and trying to find that. We do sympathize with the fact that all of our revenues are competing with a ton of expenses all over. And so, yeah, you're looking at a treadmill versus a road, so it'd probably be an innovative way of looking at it, but I think we can bring it to a future council meeting policy discussion.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Through Mayor Rochon, I just had a few quick questions. So for the River Valley Club d'Argent, the request for support, has that been rolled over already in the budget? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I know it's still like in the works, but I know the Manitoba Community Center volunteers are mobilizing and thinking of incorporating as well too. So it's a, I know it's a municipal asset, but that there are volunteers that are involved. Has this been factored into the budget?
That one hasn't, so we'd have to do a mid-year discussion, and I know that Councillor Cochrane has tried to get me out there. We're just trying to find a date and time, so we'd have to have a look at that, but not knowing what the plans are, I can't incorporate what I don't know. So I can tell you what is in there, obviously, is the River Valley. We're looking at incorporating the pickleball under capital and doing, what was suggested. And then I think there's.
If council pursues the canoe.
Yeah, and then the Keno thing as well will be discussions down the line, but those would form. So on that line for special projects, I was just speaking with Mr. Poulain, but this is on the big overview, but we'll be treating the special projects line in the same manner as we treat the budget or the capital list for you. So when we bring capital to you, we'll bring also a list of contemplated projects as well and initiatives, and we'll be bringing those to make up. And then council can decide whether you want to do less or more, and then that'll be a variable.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
With community services, any other questions in regards to community services overview? Very good. Jump to planning and building.
Planning and Building also did a mid-year adjustment in their permit fees. And as we said at the beginning, they continue to have really strong years, both with our building side of things and and with sort of just the severances and the land stuff that comes through with the planning side. So little increase projected in revenue. Other revenue, we've actually sort of been doing an odd thing with building and planning as far as just some of the fees. And so this is actually just sort of a reallocation of some of the other fees that get charged into billing and planning. So it's just sort of smoothing out the accounting on that. So salaries and wages, again, just that little bit of increase from that position conversion. The rest is just collective agreement increases. Benefits in education, we sort of already spoke about. And then they have some.
Just so you know, though, the position conversion here has a corresponding decrease in general government, right? So when I presented the plan to you about a financial analyst that was in general government and will now be a planner. So there's a flow through there. It's been netted out.
Yeah, and so there's just sort of small changes in the operating costs. It's actually a decrease in the overall operating costs, and that just reflects kind of the efficiencies in the department. So not a lot of change with building and planning.
What does special projects within planning and building encompass?
Oh, so this is the kind of 2024. This is the official plan review, and then under other professionals, they have some of the zoning review as well. And so again, on Tuesday night, we're going to look to transfer the 2023 amounts into reserve so that in 2024, when we do the whole plan, it will take the stuff that will be in reserve and the current year allocation. So at ECDev, and again, sort of just a quick note on the 2023. So in 2023, there were some projects contemplated, most particularly the phase 2 of the on the Weyerhaeuser property, which had funding and expense tied to it. So on Tuesday night, you're going to see a request to carry those amounts over to 2024 since the funding we haven't got word on yet, and we expect those projects to still go forward, but they will move that amounts over into reserve. So this is just sort of fresh dollars that economic development is looking at. And so there are some grants, and that's tied to it's called the BDO grant. Is that the term, Steph?
Clean Fuels Fund.
The Clean Fuels Fund, yeah. Little salaries and wages, and that's simply that we're not budgeting actually for any summer students this year, which has some correspondingly changes to the rest of their HR costs. Operating costs, a little bit more of investment in advertising. They've got a good plan on sort of refreshing our advertising across the board, working with our communications on some pictures and some plans in advertising. The priority projects, so the 180 in 2023 was connected to that phase 2, and so then again they're sort of moving along their list of projects, and I'd have to flip back, but perhaps Steph has got a better idea of what's sitting on their list there, on the projects for 2024.
Step.
You're talking about advertising, or are you talking about
The projects.
the priority project?
Yeah.
So there's basically the Clean Fuels Fund, which had been put on hold. There's the environmental assessment for the mill site. And then there's also the, what other project am I forgetting here? Oh, the housing study.
Housing study, correct.
We're moving certain priority items that were identified in the housing study forward. So those are basically making up what our priorities are going to be as far as projects for 2024.
All right, thank you. Just the one doctor recruitment. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so it's made up of a $20,000 amount that the municipality gives to West Nipissing General Hospital and their doctor recruitment committee there, as well as $5,000 that just covers. Several years ago, it was set up so that if there are new doctors in the municipality, then offers them membership for a year at the gym or offers them other types of incentives for doctors that have moved to the community. But there's 20,000 of it that's just a straight transfer to West Nipissing General Hospital and their doctor recruitment committee.
Now, I understand the CEO has been trying to meet with some people, including our mayor, and I think I intercepted an email as well. So it's something that's kind of active right now, where I believe there's an attempt to try and get a committee back in place and more operational. But perhaps, Madam Mayor, you know more. But
Yeah, well, I did actually have an opportunity to speak with Sue LeBeau, who is the CEO of the hospital, last week. It was more an informal discussion rather than a set meeting, but I know that they are moving forward with that. And I think it's also important to note that, although it says doctor recruitment, it's often been referred to as that. It really does address recruitment throughout the healthcare industry. So, RNs, RPNs, PSWs, doctors, and also other types of specialists, so radiologists or, any kind of medical professionals that they're looking to hire. I did receive an invite last week that they're looking to set a meeting. I did indicate to her assistant who's setting up the meeting that I believe it's Councillor Rivard and Councillor Tessier who sit on that committee. So I don't know if you have received the invitation in your council email. Please check if you haven't. I did forward her your email addresses. And if you, I'll touch base with her again, make sure you get those invites to submit your availability. And so, it will be starting up again shortly. Thank you.
And if we're ready to take a look at fire service. Increase in revenue, and that, is primarily related to MTO response, the difference in revenue. Fire also receives revenue from people who have fire permits, burning permits, that type of thing. We don't budget for the insurance recovery portion of things, because the insurance recovery, if it comes in as revenue, also goes out as directly to reserve. So we do budget it in part of our revenue. I know that budgeting for someone else's disaster on the highway sounds a little bit cold, but when I look at our last several years, we have been very busy with highway responses, and it certainly does contribute to the overall fire picture. Salaries and wages, they've had some restructuring and people assuming different positions within the fire department, which is why their salaries and wages cost is so low. Not that we didn't actually give them the collective agreement increases or anything like that. It just through restructuring, there's been some savings on that, and then benefits and training. We spoke about the training as well already. In operating costs, you'll see that decrease in materials and supplies. Again, that's that conversion of moving that $25,000 from operating down into a transfer to reserve so that it's in capital. There are things that the fire department purchases that have historically been in operating costs, and then I move them at the end of the year onto the balance sheet, for an accounting purpose rather than a budgeting purpose. So we're just sort of mirroring up things. So it's things like the bunker suits and the breathing apparatuses and things like that actually have a really substantial price tag to them, and have a substantial lifespan. So rather than expensing them in operating, having me move them at the end of the year, we're just moving the stuff to capital where it actually belongs. Again, the increase of insurance. Yeah, a little bit of change on utilities and a little bit of change on vehicle expenses, as Mr. Barbo spoke about earlier. So their overall change in expenditures is actually a fairly small change in expenditures there. We did speak about the transfer to reserve. So increase in transfer to reserve, both at 25 that's moving down from below, and the increase in transfer to reserve from on fleet. And their fleet is woefully underfunded again now. Again, we'll bring back sort of the 5 and the longer term plans with fleet. and that where they sit and where they need to be, fire trucks aren't cheap. I mean, nothing is anymore, but fire trucks aren't. So they do have a replacement plan. We've been lucky or successful in prior years in acquiring like off demo and some lightly used equipment, which has generated significant savings. That's not always a guarantee though. So, you know, we sort of plan for what replacement might be and then hope that we can find the deals on the way. And then they continue to have sort of expenditures that go, I think we must be missing a line. They continue to have expenditures that go into equipment and facilities as well. And the last one then I got is bylaw service. The bylaw used to be rolled up under corporate services. When we changed the reporting structure, so the bylaw actually reports up through our fire chief and emergency services. It seemed kind of odd to combine, like just to collapse it into the fire department for a budget process. So it sort of sits out on its own here. So as we spoke, there's sort of this increase in wages and benefits that corresponds with the addition of a part-time bylaw officer that's sort of in the points for council, and the rest of the bylaw costs held fairly consistent. It was a bit of an odd year this year with only having a bylaw officer in for part of the year again. You know, but they are sort of well within their budget as far as their operating costs. So that's why you don't see any change in the operating. It's just that ask of the position.
Under vehicle expenses, it just has $1,000. So there was, that seemed probably low for.
I think something has been set to the wrong spot. I think we probably have it sitting up in utilities. I'll have to take a look. Because yeah, no, our vehicle expenses are absolutely more than 1,000. I suspect that we've had a line get rolled up into utilities and communications because they only have a cell phone. They don't have $15,000 worth of utilities there. So I'll make that correction on presentation. Yeah, yeah.
Is his vehicle leased or purchased?
Purchased, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, we just had a little thing. So if we're okay, then what we have left after that is sort of our boards and committees.
Just before we start, I just noticed that when you mentioned the doctor recruitment, I was looking on the website and I don't think it's updated since we had the reshuffle. Into updating the municipal website to show our
Current
current.
committee assignments?
Oh,
Because I think some were. I'm sure, but maybe
I
that was
definitely
missed.
don't have this.
we'll do a
one.
full review. I did notice a few things when I don't look for myself on my own website a whole lot, but there were a few things, so we'll do a review to make sure things are. Thanks.
So the first two committees are just internal committees. They're really just sort of separate little budgets. Emergency measures, you know, we just keep a small budget that sort of covers some of the fuel for our generators and testing of that. And the Heritage Committee was set up several years ago. It has had sort of a few actions, was generally quiet all through COVID, but we just keep sort of a small amount there if there's, you know, plaques or any of that type of thing that needs to happen.
Do we have it? Sorry, I don't know. No. Hey? No way.
It may actually fall under that new community services as well, because there's a line of heritage.
Yeah.
So on our boards, again, these are sort of the ones that are kind of more internal. So police board, no change. The only change is with the library board, and they have actually got their budget approved. That's what they're asked to the municipality is that a $12,000 increase on their budget.
Is the library budget I know we don't have any say in how they spend, but we do have a say on whether or not we approve our contribution. So is the budget document from the library available to us to review?
I don't see why it wouldn't be available, why I
It
can't
should
make it
be.
available. Yeah, I can
Did
send it
you-
out.
Did you receive it?
I did receive the
Okay,
document.
yeah.
Yep.
And that also outlines their reserve position as well.
I don't believe it shows what their reserve is.
Can we get
Yeah.
get details on what the reserve position is for the library as well, please?
Yeah, so one of the things, same thing with the, the local police thing. The decision point that council has the authority to do is to give a level of expenditure or a level of contribution. They don't have the authority to tell them how to fix it. So if council, with all of the information, makes a decision that they say, okay, we approve this, fine, you can give them more, fine, or you can give them less, fine, and then they'll have to, as an operating board, make the adjustments.
Thank you.
And cemetery, the large,
Councilor Reston has a question, please.
I was not sleeping. I was looking ahead to other things. But with the committees, I don't know if it was raised or not, but the youth committee that we had put together, is that?
it's sitting under community services, sitting part of their budget, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just a comment on cemetery, that the large part of cemetery expense is actually simply grass cutting and maintenance, and we are in a 3-year deal, are we? Yeah, so that we have fairly a good expectation of what our costs will be with cemeteries there. So policing, a little bit finer tuning with some of the grants, just in that we actually have the police actually have a community safety grant, and that's what the 130 was from last year. The grant still exists, it's just that the spending of it has slowed. So I'm just matching the grant to the expenditures. If the expenditures on the grant exceed, we still have that full 130, it would move. Just doing on expectations that the spending on the grant has slowed. The grant is being used to fund some of their community policing and the addition of a social worker or mental health professional on their teams and on their responses. It's a great addition to West Nipissing. It's a fairly common practice. It's now going that we realize that, we need to put the right professionals in the right place. And so the municipality has funding for that. It's sort of a trial process on that. I think the funding runs to March of 2025, I think. We've got the whole year of 2024. The offset there is you see that in the contractor line. So our contractor line is now our OPP contract plus a corresponding amount for this individual that is part of the community policing. Our lease was still revenue, and we get that kind of reconciled year over year on expenses. But that's just what our flat part is before reconciliation. And then the cost of running the facility itself.
Sorry, can I just ask a question on that social work position? So is that the municipality receives a grant, and from that grant pays a contractor?
Yes.
The contractor is not an employee of the police service?
No.
And they're not an employee of the municipality?
Correct.
Contractor to the municipality?
So the West Nipissing General Hospital is at the contractor. So they're an employee of West Nipissing General Hospital. We pay the hospital for their services.
Is it somebody through the Alliance Center? Is that, or is it like it, I'm just sorry. So the hospital hires the contractor.
The hospital has the employee,
Municipality
yes.
pays the hospital to hire the contractor to provide the service to the police.
She's dedicated full-time to the police.
It's a full-time position?
She's dedicated
Yeah.
to the police, so she works in
Yes.
conjunction with the police.
Where does she work out of, the police station or the hospital?
That I don't know. I know that I met the individual with Chief Lopeman, right? So where is she based?
I'm gonna say she's based with the OPP
Yeah.
because
Okay,
if we have issues,
contractor.
that requires that assistance, we
Yeah.
contact OPP and they send out that team
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. I just wanted to.
and they have a dedicated officer too, Sarge,
Okay,
who works in partnership with her.
okay. So they're like a pair. Okay, like partners.
Team.
Team, thank you.
Yeah. I'll ask.
Oh, sorry, yes, Frank.
Just to come back on the revenues for the lease, I guess that's what you get, the 338,000 from the police
Yes,
for the lease every year.
yes.
Does that pay for our payments for the loan entirely or part of it?
Yes, yes. Yeah, so the lease is set up with two components. One is a base rate, and the base rate recovers our capital investment in the building. And then there's an operating part, and the operating part is reconciled year over year, which recaptures the 48 provincial part of the expenses. And so that's what is in the 338,000. It's both components there, yeah. You will see down at the bottom of that page in the financing cost, a decrease in the financing cost, and that's that difference in repayment to reserve. So over the transition, and until we got out of the FTE model and into the calls for service model, we transferred amounts from reserve to kind of smooth, and then the police budget is paid back. So we were in 2023, there was a $650,000 payback from the police budget into general reserve. There's just a 200,000 payback. I think it's 208,000 payback this year, and then the police have repaid all that transition and everything's back, and it's just sort of a go forward on the calls for service model.
Because there was less calls for that year?
So the savings between, let's say, West Nipissing Police and the OPP, those savings, we still bumped up our cost to pay back our financing of the transition cost of both of them. And what she's indicating is that we're almost paid up other than 200,000. So we went into reserve 5 years ago or whatever to pay some of the transition costs with the plan of repaying it every year. And so police has been repaying it every year, and we only have in this year 200,000 and change to repay. So our reserve is going to go up by $200,000. And then you'll start to recognize savings by that corresponding amount. Theoretically, next year in the 2025 budget deliberation year, you'll see the full savings of what OPP are kind of thing, and that their true cost of what they deliver without paying back what it cost to transfer.
Okay, yeah, because way back when we did switch, I remember there was, I think, the 225 was the year that was
Yep.
big over there.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. And so then with service partners, and again, we touched on these in the overview, we have made assumptions. Animal control is on a fixed contract. That is the actual one. The others, we sort of have made assumptions on where our position might be. And I've done that just sort of simply based on historical increases. Now, both DSAB and the health unit, I know, do have outside pressures from provincial funding being rolled back and things like that, and changes in percentage as far as what municipalities are required to kick into both of those agencies. But if Councillor Restulo is going to be there Wednesday, we know that you're going to hold the line for us.
Definitely be at that meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, and so the municipality tends to actually, let's say DSAB, it happens particularly with DSAB. DSAB's overall municipal portion will increase by, let's say 3%, but our municipality might increase by 3.7 because we're doing based on assessment, and our assessment is growing faster than some of our neighbors do. So we tend to take a bigger piece of the pie than the
we're more
overall
successful as a
municipal.
We're
It
better
is,
than
yeah.
that. What, North Bay? Was it North Bay?
And then again, just looking at the last page with the debt I'm going to just do a stop share for a second so I can pull up my screen and I'll just give you some,
Just on the service partners, I just want to add to the description there, just so all of our council knows and public knows that District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board also covers Ontario Works Administration, although there's some changes being made to that.
Yeah.
The provision of paramedic services in our community, affordable housing and homelessness supports, and also children and family services, just
Yeah.
because it just says there
ODSP.
social housing and homelessness, but there are a couple other areas of service that DSAP does provide
All of those
for the
social
money.
components, yes.
So I just wanted to,
Yeah.
because it doesn't say paramedics in there, and it is paramedic service as well. Thank
It'd be nice to have a list of everything. Just
Yeah, I think it
They
was
did make a
probably, when they
presentation
did
at
that, we had the delegation back in January or February of this year. And I think they covered kind of all of the different areas of services, but I'll see if I can pull that up and resend that to.
Yeah, their website's very informative too. Just saying.
and so just with the debt, because we did have a bit of a discussion earlier on the debt position. So we do have a number of loans that are going to fall off sort of through 25, 26, and 27, and sort of reduce the municipal debt portion. NOHFC is one that's been on my radar and on NOHFC's radar. And I actually had a reach out recently from them to see if we can get that one actually just paid out, not paid out the whole amount, yeah, but forgiven the left of that. So hopefully we can get that one resolved this year. Yeah, and the rest of our loans outside of, so we have a small loan still carrying on the waterfront development. Again, it does have a municipal portion. It does have revenues attached to that building as well. Ambulance Bay has got revenues attached to it. The Infrastructure Ontario Emergency is actually when we redid the police and fire station in this building. That now is fire and our municipal operations are in that space, and then some other projects that were community services projects. The Infrastructure Ontario funding works very well for us sometimes because it locks you in for the full term at a fixed rate. So we've got interest rates that run from just over 2% on that emergency financing one, up to so about 3.5% on the ambulance base. So we've got some good rates. Nothing that has to be refinanced right now in our current market. So yeah, that's what we got on debt.
I just want to say thanks for the breakdown because I don't know, after looking at like the principal and interest, it looks like it's pretty healthy, right? But when you show the debt at the start, it's a little daunting. But then after looking at this, it looks like quite a few of them will be paid off within a couple of years, right? So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a positive thing. Mention that. Thanks.
waterfront.
So the waterfront, that was, again, when we did the Minnehaha Bay redevelopment, there was a lot of grant money that went with that, but then we had to have a small portion that was financed. Yeah, and that one is paid off in 2027, beginning of 2027.
While we're on that subject, we're breaking even with that.
Well, it depends it depends how you would interpret breaking even. Because I think that the rents that are there from our tenants are providing a fair proportionate share of what the building would be, kind of thing. There are other ways that site is designed to be a community benefit site. And so, it's not a normal site. So a lot of that is we increased kind of green space, parkland, trails, you have a water park up the hill and that kind of thing. So, you can't really, say that the rents are paying for that. No, it's a municipal asset. And we've increased that amount. That's why I was talking to you about all of these great grants that are one time, and we can pat ourselves on the back and we grow from it. We're beautiful, but then we have to sustain them after, for sure.
Okay, cancel lunch. Said cancel lunch. Any other
Well,
questions at this point? I'd like to just talk about, Mr. Barbeau, if you can walk us through what the rest of the process is. I know that that's the meeting for next Thursday. I did send out your availability. I know somebody's not available Thursday, but it's only one, Councillor Rivard. Is that the plan now is that we will meet again in regards to budget on Thursday evening?
Right, and so, you know, we have a bit of time here, and, you know, being fully open and transparent, or whatever. You know, we're going to be looking at, and hopefully on the 23rd, I apologize, Madam Mayor, but looking at what was available in terms of people's availability. Obviously, this Monday we have environmental, and then so Thursday would be our next available time if council is available, great. And then after that, we look at Monday, the 27th as well, possibly. So what would happen, and I'm not looking at sewer and water, so we can cover those, they're very easy budgets, we cover those during a committee meeting. And once that's ready, it'll probably come in January. There's not the same rush. There is a rush, though, to benefit from this for capital, right? And so, you know, the presentation on Thursday will be what projects are contemplated with the level of expenditures that we're calling, and then you'll have a better sense for whether you like this budget or not. But right now, you know, it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. You can talk about what you want to do. We can talk about things we have to do, which is what this budget tells us, and then other things that are going to be the added value stuff. I did appreciate Councillor Rivard's comments, though, that we're down to 5.3. $200,000 additional to that is, you know, is basically, and I'm just giving you a bunch of sales pitch numbers here because it sounds like we're increasing our budget by 5.3. We are not. We're increasing the budget by 1.9%. So, because if you take the 5.3 is the impact on the general levy, but the expenditures are 38 million. The tax portion of that is around 21, 22. Something like that. So she can do my 1.9 is probably off. I probably did bad math on that. But the point I'm making is our increases are not that large. And then when you factor in the fact that you have in the budget decisions you have to make, you have a lot of uncontrollable expenditures that you just have to pay. And then you can argue whether some are controllable or not. But obviously, your levies, as Councillor Rivard indicated, which amounts to about 2% right there, are uncontrollable. So that brings the controllable part of what we're doing here from a tax perspective to about 3% and change, right? And then if you factor in that part of that decision was a plan which has been implemented by the treasurer to pay back the reserve for policing, there's an additional point there as well. We're recontributing of that. So when you net out all of that, our expenditures haven't increased a whole lot, and that's what you saw. It's probably really boring, the presentation, and not that she was boring, I thought she was exciting as heck. But you know, there's not a lot there. There's not a lot of change organizationally that we're planning on doing. I think that this council has done a lot of work with respect to realigning the organization to move forward, and I think that this budget will reflect that. I have indicated to the senior staff that I'd like to see some of our staffing people get into place and start moving, and there's a lot of stuff we do to add value to the community, which can be free, committees, stuff that need to get going again. So perhaps a discussion, Madam Mayor, is your comfort level with spending. And it's hard because councils have been so ingrained on trying to limit these increases, and you know, and I understand that, but at the end of the day, we do have to offer services. So I was coming into this with what I felt was going to be a reasonable recommendation as to what I think a levy increase should be. Not that I want it to be, I'd rather not, but given council's priorities and what we already still need to do, this is the initial budget. So maybe just a discussion on that, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Sorry, can you ask your question again? But how much do we want to spend? Is that our?
What are you comfortable with? You know, this is my guess as to what, minus about 50, 60 grand to get it on the right side of 5. This is basically a status quo budget right now.
I will say for me, and this is not really on the spending thing, I had a bit of a hard time following along without having, and I know one of the downfalls of doing budget so early is that we don't have actuals from 2023 to work with. But when I'm looking at budgets, I like to see what we budgeted, what we spent, and then what we want to spend next year. And for me, part of today was difficult because we don't have an actual, and we wouldn't have it until after December 31st. But it would be helpful to have a projected spend on the line items, like as we're going through the budget. Just for me, it was kind
So
of
we've
like,
already done that as administration.
oh, I understand, but I'd like to see it.
Right. Yeah, we can give you that line year to date, but it's going to be extremely confusing for you and raise more questions because it's now November and you would be extrapolating, and without your knowledge of what's going to actually be spent, it isn't representative.
Can you do a projected?
That's why we have taken that and we know what we did.
Mhm.
And we've adjusted line items, that -10 training. Why are you decreasing training by 10 when you want to increase? Because they only spent half of that. And that's why. So we've netted that out for you. I know it's a trust issue, not that you don't trust us, but it's a blind faith kind of thing, but that's what we've done. And most municipalities can give you overall conceptual things as to where their challenges are. But any municipality that's budgeting in prior to end of year are going budget to budget.
Yeah, there's no way to do a projected line amount, like a projected end of year amounts on. It's just, for me, it's
Right.
a little easier to follow along, and we can, I don't know, that's just my opinion on how I'm comfortable at looking at budgets. As for where we want to be, I mean, I'd like to see what's included on the capital budget before we kind of, I don't, any other comments from Councillor Pedray?
Oui, pour moi, le but de commencer le budget de bonheur comme ça, c'est surtout pour les gros morceaux qu'on a besoin, là, comme le pont Eugène, le pont sur le chemin Eugène, c'est des affaires comme ça, là.
Ouais.
Que faut commencer de bonne heure. Je m'imagine qu'on est capable d'approuver the pre-approved part of the budget. There's no rush to, you know what I mean, to approve the budget as a whole. We can do it.
Well, it kind of flies in the face of what budgeting does, but I do agree with you that one of the key benefits that you see, but that we also see, is that we can get to our tendering and our procurement process earlier, for sure. But it also, earlier budgeting, if you get away from the habits and get into the strategy, could allow you a little bit more time as well to restructure. And so let's say, let me be blunt. I've had some councils that were unbelievably not getting policy and not getting whatever and having budgets in May. There's not a darn thing you can do approving a budget in May that's going to affect that year. It's done. So if you want a material change, and let's say you want to shift from public works to community services, and you want to realize the full benefit of your strategic shift, the earlier you get it done, the better it is for us to realign resources to maximize that in that year. So that's the advantage of budgeting almost a year in advance. where you can talk. And then when we get to you with 4 or 5 year plans too, that'll be an evolution where you will be looking down the line as well. So.
Oui, mais on est de bonheur, on est au mois de novembre. D'habitude, on fait ça au mois de mai,
Oui,
avril,
mais la
mai.
décision, c'est pour tous ces bénéfices-là, Fern.
Oui, ça, je comprends ça, je suis d'accord pour les gros morceaux.
Ouais.
Comme on dirait, là, on vient d'avoir les papiers hier, c'est toujours, on dirait, le rush.
Non, je suis pas pressé.
Non, ça file de même.
Ouais.
So, je me dis que c'est pas, ça n'est pas obligé d'être fait demain, là. Pour les gros morceaux, oui. Mais pour le reste, ça
Il y a toutes
presse
sortes
pas.
d'autres choses, Fern, que ça ne vous affecte pas, vous autres, mais ça affecte les cadres seniors. Et c'est que le plus de bonheur que vous pouvez faire ces décisions puis ôter ça, ça nous donne la chance de travailler à l'avance. Maintenant, quand on est en temps de contemplation d'un budget, we're a little bit in status quo mode. So we wait for you.
Bon,
Some of you guys, you folks who are administrators know that you're waiting for that. So as soon as you have that, then your whole mindset as a staff is on go mode after that. So the quicker I can get to go mode, the quicker we get stuff done for our residents.
oui, je comprends, mais c'est encore pas mal mieux que le mois de mai, là. On est au mois de novembre.
Oui, mais ça,
Quand même qu'on pousse ça une couple de semaines, même un mois de
Oui,
plus.
définitivement.
C'est ça que je veux dire, là.
Laisse-moi vous indiquer
Je parle pas
que
d'aller au mois de
il
mai.
n'y a pas façon d'approuver un budget sans les nombres exacts des autres comités de toute façon.
Oui.
Alors, on aurait besoin de ça. Alors, le vote pour appuyer le budget va être fait pour la plupart fin de janvier.
OK.
Okay.
Oui,
Mais le travail devrait être fait maintenant pour qu'on puisse être un petit peu plus proactif et flexible pour faire les changements et implémenter. Moi, j'ai une historique ici les derniers 6 ans de m'excuser pour ne pas avoir fait beaucoup de projets. And there's some issues with, that's our fault, and there's resource issues with that, but there's also, when are we getting it approved? So you take that away and give us more time to get stuff done, it's a lot better for us. And it's not just capital, because there's other things too, like approving, starting January 1, approving the River Valley old age. You know, if we get those things kind of conceptually approved, we can move on some things that benefit our residents too. So,
Oui, je suis d'accord. Oui.
okay.
Sorry, can I just be excused for?
Yes.
I'll here speak to it. You know, it was just a general chat. Certainly, it's very difficult to get a budget like this and go all in favor. Absolutely not. You need to know, and you haven't even seen what you're getting for it. You know you're going to get plows. You know you're going to get arenas and people, whatever. But what are those projects in your term plan that are planning on being checked off? What roads, sidewalks, whatever, what buildings are we going to do? And that'll happen this Thursday.
Okay, Councillor Tessier, did you have?
I think you've answered my question, because I was going to say, when I look at this, it's just numbers. I'm trying to think back at what fits in there without,
Right.
and then you said the term plan, then that will fit to see what priority we want to select, right? Because I
Right.
know what stage you're at and what we want to concentrate on developing, like concentrating on this section and then a little bit less on the other, like still work,
Right.
prioritize more.
We're still taking the whole term plan as if it's a document that council wishes to provide. So I'm still going to be using it as a benchmark when I have directors meeting to say, chief, where are we on the fire master study? Let's get that RFP in. You know, because the chief's really busy doing other things right now in terms of recruitment. So we say, oh, yeah, sorry, you know, whatever. And then so we have to move the bar along on all of it. Doesn't necessarily mean the expenditure of additional resources. It's basically channeling the resources that we have towards your objectives.
Plus you're waiting for answers back or project back, like consultations and
Well, it's just that that's not all we do. Your term plan's not all we do, right? It's probably 20% of what we do. Just managing this place day to day takes up a lot of time. You know, oh, this guy called in sick, or this person got into a fight with this person, or this truck blew up and knocked our garage down. Yeah, true story. 2 weeks ago, yeah, this guy should have shut his truck before he went through the garage, you know, and stuff like that. So there are things that we do during the day. So, as the mayor knows. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying that the other day, like, yeah, it's, when you're here on a regular and you see, Miss Craddock's desk stacked with papers about 4 inches deep, and she's in the middle of budget and, you know, just all the different moving parts, of operating the municipality, you know, what we see or what residents see on the surface, is, you know, it's like an iceberg. You only really see 10% of what's going on, and there's all the managing staff, and there's road plows and service requests and budgeting and applying for grants and following up with this. So, you know, like it really is. I'm often look around and don't know how the people that we have get as much done as they do, because it's
We're
there's
crazy.
a lot of work around here. So, Councillor St. Louis, did I see your hand?
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but through you, Madam Mayor, and I think Mr. Bravo did touch on it. Oh, did. For me, that was the thing. So one of the questions, or what you were asking of us, is what we think of, you know, what was presented to us. And I'll be that individual that I was last year, right? So last year when you came to us, I think it was around 70% and we ended up at 3.7 or 4, whatever it was, right? And I do understand that what you're saying now is it's not, you're not asking for 5.3, you're only basically saying 1.9-ish, which is above the 3 point something that.
Oh, don't get, no. The 1.9. What?
No, so what I'm saying though. No, so what I'm saying is, what I'm getting at is I understand what you're saying, and that we're not asking our residents for 5.31 on top of everything else that we're already asking, right?
Well, it's a general levy increase, which means it doesn't affect the tax classes in the same way, but right now it's a 5.3. And then you can imagine that on average, things would go up or down depending on what tax class you have. The point of 1.9 is that the 5.3 is taking the entire, let's say, $40 million that we have, and basically indicating that we need to gain $1 million on it, right? $1.2 million. Well, anybody with a calculator, just take that and it'll show you that it's actually not 5.3. It's a lot less. The problem is that we are forced to go and grab it through taxation because the other sources of revenue don't have that variable ability to get. We have to get government grants. So let's say our true rise would have been, let's say 2.5% was the cost. If OMPF would not have been $26,000 lower, but an increase of 2.5, that would have impacted us too, and we wouldn't have to go to taxes to get it. Those are the types of things I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
So, yeah.
and I totally understand that, right? And I think for me, and I'm not sure about the others, for me to make a determination on the numbers that are given to us, and I know that's what we did last year, and I think that's what Fern was getting at, Councilor Pellerin, is additional information, which is coming Thursday, and I think that's what, I think some of us weren't not aware, but forgot about that. We did that last year, right? Mr. Poulin presents, Chief Lufin presents, Mr. Remillard presents. Everybody will present what their plan and what they're asking for and why they're asking for it. So I think once that is provided to us, I think that's
what you
that's what that's for me is when I'll be able to say, you know what, absolutely, 5.31, let's go with it.
Yeah.
Or hold on, can we not maybe look at pushing this to the following year, like the fire trucks or the plows that we approved last year and stuff like that. And that way we can get back down to 3.5 or 4.1, or I won't say increase, but I mean,
No, but so to suck up a bit and to be honest with you, it's very refreshing. The reason I asked the question is it's actually a fairly dumb budgeting question to say, despite all of the logic that we present, what do you want? But I got to tell you, over the past 23 years, it didn't matter what we would say and say, no, I don't want it over 2. Well, how do you want me to get it over 2 at 2 after I just told you it's this. So something's got to go, or you guys have to realign. Hey, you hockey players, we're shutting down an arena, or we're going to restructure this way and this way. You want to not pay for your services, go ahead. But you can't, it's got to be logical. So that's the point, is based on your term plan and what you want, based on what municipalities have to service, this is the best that we can kind of do. And then there's harder discussions and decisions that have to have 5 out of 9 agree with. And then you have to agree to a whole other expenditure. And then you end up being like the US, unless you're tying in other packages, I'm not going to approve this. It gets very difficult because Zan's needs are different than Ann's needs, are different than Jerome's needs. And trying to package all that in is the rub. So it deals with a lot of compromise. This is what we offer. You may not approve of that, but you do, so it's finding that middle ground, right? So, no, I'm very positive with the starting point. I'm very positive about that. Knowing what's going on in other communities right now and that, it's not a bad point.
Councillor Resto, you have a question?
Probably just a comment. I think, for wrapping up soon, I just wanted to say thanks to the staff for providing this info where we're at to date. And I think that's, like Councillor St. Louis mentioned, that's the important discussion piece, is what's coming up after this.
Yeah.
This is a great overview of where we're at, where we could be, but seeing those underlying activities under each of the departments is going to be where we make a lot of our decisions on.
Right.
And I think, and I'm going back and maybe my memory is failing me at the ripe old age of 49, but having this term plan with the budget, I don't think we were that active in years past when I was here a while ago. And I think that's important because that really keeps us focused on the longer term picture and how are we getting there, instead of being choppy year to year and not really having that long-term vision. So I think that's a great document to have here. And the other thing is just a comment of mine that I never really liked when I was on council before, and I'm not talking about the CEO, is just that number, right? I want to be a 2 or I want to be a 3. Well, what does it mean? And I remember some of the old discussions, and that's after your first presentation like you did today, that would be the first comments.
That's why I
made.
bring it up. I'm not saying I agree with it, but just what's your comfort level? And I'll try and get you there, but it'll come with some assumptions or something's got to give. So if you say 4.7, I'll get you there.
Yeah.
But it's what's going to give.
That's the thing I always, I don't think I didn't understand it, but I maybe didn't understand the rationale behind some people's, what does that mean? Instead, it's not just a number, it's the underlying service for that number. But I think, I really like the way that we're moving forward with this.
Thanks.
And with the discussions that
This council through talking about fiscal responsibility too. It's tough when you're a council that's coming in with a term of renewal and refreshment and all of that, but then also have to wear, for good or bad, some of the decisions that were made by past councils of limiting the 2s and the 1%. Well, yeah, we got it to there. Some were by cutting costs, some cutting service, and others by fast and loose financing, as you saw with the 1.5, right? And so then you're going, holy moly, now I got to rely on that. What happens if we really have a bad year or whatever? So that, so those types of things. So you're bringing the organization forward and the community forward in probably better than I've ever seen. And I'm just talking as an old consultant now. And at the same time, doing it in a fiscally sustainable manner to be able to sustain it for the future. So, yeah, if you accomplish even part of that, this community is way ahead of other communities.
You said one other question. I know we're approving the budget, and part of that process, I think I know the answer, but I want to be sure. Part of this is the reserves situation, and part of that is work that had been approved through prior budgets. And I'm thinking of the bridge on Eugene Road. So we approved that last year. That goes into a dedicated reserve for that project.
Yeah.
So when we talk about being ahead of the curve and going out for, RFPs or whatever it is for getting the work done, is that contingent on us approving the budget because that's part of the reserve portion? We can't just go ahead because we've already approved that through a previously approved budget?
Technically, you can, and then they did on one project. I
Yeah,
believe.
the difference with so we did that with the Front Street because again, it was an approved project, it was an approved amount. We just re-tendered it, what you're awarding on Tuesday is for next year. The difference with the Eugene Road Bridge is that there's money set aside based on what the estimate was in 2023. With consultation with we had an engineering firm with that, with our internal engineering, they think that the number actually has to be higher. And so
That's
then
a
it,
budget request.
so then it becomes a budget
Part of
request.
We carry over $1 million, but if the estimate's 1.5, we need to go put 5 million,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gagnon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For me, I'm just a question. On Thursday, when we meet in regards to the different departments, are we gonna have the operational cost or increase and capital increase per department, which will bring us up to the 1.5, including all the social services that we're getting from DSAB and from
I
the
don't
Shaw
understand
Tool?
your comment.
Are we gonna have a breakdown of capital increase
Yep.
for the next budget and also operational?
You want it broken down between capital and operation divided not per department.
No, per department.
Well, I think you have that in here.
Yeah, can we have a summary of it,
Okay,
please?
okay, a summary of the
Yeah.
increases that way, okay.
Per department, so we see what's increasing capital for
Yeah.
an operational
Yeah.
department. And can also have the exact increase for Au Chateau DSAP. What's the increase that it's being put on the 5 point something increase?
That's-
Can we have that too?
That is in there.
Yeah, there's
That's
no
it.
percentage, though, there's.
Oh, you want the
just
percentage? Oh, you want the
But
percentage?
you want
Oh, okay,
what
okay.
our assumptions were
Yeah.
on that, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think I verbalized that
Yeah.
those 3 and
Yeah,
the rest are all
exactly.
4.
Yeah.
But we don't want to say that it's like that, and then they're going to go, hey, they want 4, we were going to give them 2.
Yeah, I know, I know. I know what you mean. Just for a summary
Yeah.
for us per department, that would help in the.
Yeah, sure.
decision
Whatever we
making.
can package if, that works for the way you see it, I've got no problem with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just, I'll go to you, Councillor Rivard. Actually, maybe I should go to you first. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you,
Rivard.
Madam Mayor. I guess it was more similar to what Councillor St. Louis and Councillor Restal mentioned, that I like how this is high level stuff and I like that we're starting much earlier. It seems like the right thing to do. And Thursday should help, like what Councillor St. Louis said, it'll help to see actually where the money is going and see if there is a way to maybe bring it down a little bit more if we feel comfortable with this number. But Thursday, I'll find a way to find another goalie for the game and I'll be here. It sounds pretty
They
interesting.
won't miss you.
No, I don't think. He might even be better.
And to Fern's point too, if there's no way of approving a budget, I'm not gonna be losing any sleep over it, but I certainly, to the point, will say, are you okay with this minimal expectation of what we're planning on doing for capital? And if you're verbally giving us the go-ahead, I've already said that, listen, they could go up, they may go down. Do 80% of your planning on the capital level now and start your tendering process now so that we don't go sequentially and say, December 4th, we've approved the capital and now they start the work and they're putting it out in January. I'd like them to assume that they're moving, because I'm pretty darn sure they're going to be getting those, and then they're going to move on, and then all you're going to be doing is plus or minus 20% or something.
If I can speak to capital, so, the goal is that we actually have a policy that speaks when there's 5-year capital plans that are approved, the departments can use 75% of the current year stuff in getting ready for the following year. The problem is that we got behind in getting those 5-year capital plans approved. And so the hope is, again, this year was just so compressed that we get through our capital this year. We are then bringing back capital plans every year at an earlier window for council to chew on. So by the time we get to doing operating, we've got that hard work also already done. And then they can move ahead with projects, even though the rest is still unsettled and things like that. They can just sort of take advantage of those things, and vehicles that have 2-year lead times for ordering and that kind of nonsense.
It's just a new, different world, really. The vehicle stuff, holy moly.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Pavan.
Yeah, on that note, I would go even further for projects like the old bridge on Eugene. Because just thinking this summer, when Levesque Brothers was there, you know, the yard was 1,000 feet from that bridge. And I called the CEO, see if they wouldn't put in a bid. And they looked at it and says, no, it doesn't fit in our timeline. They're so busy that they couldn't even do it.
Right.
So even if we look even more than a year ahead on stuff like this that we know we need, then we even get a better chance of a better price for companies like that. Because they're so busy, they say, okay, not even next summer, the summer after, we can bid on this.
Councillor Papadini, that's music to a staff member's ears.
It's,
If we ever got to the point where like we're NGO-ish and planning on a horizon that way, and we know they're gonna be approved, absolutely. Absolutely, that's the goal. Yes.
I'd just like to recap, because there were a couple of requests throughout for information that will help us along the way. So I just want to be sure that I didn't miss anybody, and that the request for information was received by staff. So there was a request for the amount for the impact assessment change within West Nipissing. And a reference under general government on page 5. Detailed staffing comparison. I don't know what the date range was, but from now, like 2015, like.
I don't think that's a budgetary discussion. That'll be, I'll bring that to a committee meeting.
Okay. And then I had, is it possible to get the presentation that DSAB, and you'd probably have it in your records, they're sent to all council that they used for their delegation in January, just as a refresher on the services that DSAB provides. And then during our capital discussion, we will also discuss some special projects that we've been approached with, and that will include Keno, pickleball, the River Valley Golden Age Club funding, and any funds that may be available for youth committee activity. And I guess that would also include the MOU for the, although that would be approved at council this week.
The 5,000?
Yeah,
No.
but does that have to go in, well, it.
No,
does go
as
in
we
budget.
indicated, those are already rolled into
Okay.
community, but
Okay, so that I just wanted to go over it. Is there anybody else who had requests for information during the course of the meeting that I didn't cover there and you'd like to make sure staff was aware of?
Councillor Gagne.
Deals with capital and
Yeah.
operational budget.
the breakdown,
Yeah,
like a roll-up summary sheet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
I'm about to hit send on the library stuff to the council.
Okay, that would be great too. I forgot my own request.
It's because you asked and didn't write it down.
That's exactly what it is. Thank you, Sir Carter.
so yes, to go back to the number of staff, it's gonna be at a council meeting, which not on,
Well, it really depends on how available the information is, right? I mean, you're asking me to go back, and one of the requests was, you know, to do periodic comparisons like 2000, 2008, whatever. There's some work involved in that. So, and then there's corporate knowledge and history, which I think I'm the only one that has. So there's a bit of work putting that together.
okay, we had mentioned, like in 2006,
Right.
was the last time that you revised salaries,
Right,
right? Let's take 2006 compared to today.
right.
Amount,
Yeah, we've done that
Staff.
analysis, yeah.
can I get that? When?
Again, if it's just that comparison, I can probably get that back for the general government meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any else? Okay, does any member of our staff have anything else they want to add before the council's, we've said what we have to say? Staff, any other final comments before we adjourn? Okay, with that, I will take mover and a seconder to adjourn. What? Oh, never mind. Madam Clerk's ahead of me on that.
It is moved by Councillor Restool and seconded by Councillor Teissier. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-89, being a bylaw of the West Nipissing Municipality to confirm the proceedings of council at its budget meeting on November the 18th, 2023, shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
Okay, all in favor? Carried.
It is moved by Councillor Teissier and seconded by Councillor Restool. Be it resolved that the budget meeting of council held on November the 18th, 2023, be adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you again, everybody, for coming on Saturday.